Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Monday's edition of the dceu Daily. On today's show, we discuss David Zaslav's search for a president of DC Studios and what are his motivations within this search. Every time I talk about the DCEU, people out there go back, resort to the Hamadaverse versus the Snyderverse. It is not about that. The Hamadaverse and Snyderverse are irrelevant at this point. I don't know what his thinking is in terms of Zaslav, if he wants to restore the Snyderverse or not. But in terms of the search of a leader for DC Studios, Zaslav's mentality is very different. It's very ambitious. He wants the best person he can get. But what kind of DC live action universe does Zaslav want? Because this is very important in terms of his search for a president and leader of a brand new DC Studios. Does he want one connective shared universe? Well, there's only one person who's been successful in forging a connective shared universe, and that's Kevin Feige. So if that's what Zaslav wants, he has to go and get Kevin Feige or try. Now, as soon as I say these words, it's the usual thing from people out there again. Feige could never come to DC. We of course know he was very tempted in running DC a few years back when he was having problems with Marvel Studios and Disney, so we know that. But, you know, this guy Zaslav is very ambitious and very ruthless. Let's look at this for a minute. He's spoken to Bob Iger. He's been speaking to people like Alan Horn and Bob Iger. Alan Horn and Bob Iger are the people who made the decision to purchase Marvel Studios. And we know the success that decision has been because really it was Kevin Feige they were buying. And that's the most important thing. When they bought Lucasfilm, they weren't buying any intel. They were just buying the studio. And Lucas insisted on Kathleen Kennedy being the leader of that studio or he wouldn't sign the deal. He thought she would protect his legacy. He was, of course, wrong. So in terms of Kevin Feige, the man is a genius. Now, he's not Scorsese or anything. He's not even a director. But what he is a very good producer. And he is the only person who successfully put together a connective universe. What does success look like? Nearly 25 billion in revenue for a franchise. Think about that for a minute. Yes, it's about the money. Zaslav wants to make money, but he also wants to create great entertainment. So if he wants a successful, connective DC universe, he at least attempts to get Kevin Feige. Can he get Kevin Feige? I said this on Twitter and I said this on here the other day. Kevin Feige is at a crossroads in his career. Does he stay at Marvel Studios and keep this success going until he retires? Or does he take the challenge on that Richard Donner, the late Richard Donner, the director of Superman the movie, the Lethal Weapon series, wanted him to take on? It's an interesting thing, really, isn't it? Because it is a huge challenge, DC. It's a challenge that no one's consistently been able to find consistent success with. Richard Donner himself was fired after Superman the movie. Richard Lester did a fabulous Superman 2. To be fair, Superman 3 was made, it was okay, I don't totally hate it, but you understand. And then you look at other content from DC. There's been some big successes, but there's also been some big failures. You know, they could have created a cinematic universe after Superman the movie. They again could have created a cinematic universe either after Green Lantern or after Superman Returns. There were so many opportunities to do what Feige did before Feige did it. But they didn't have that mentality and they didn't ever have anyone with them, you know, clever enough to pull it off. Feige's always been there. He was there with the Raimi universe of Spider-Man and Bryan Singer's X-Men. He's always been there in the background. And listen, it's probably more luck than judgment that Feige's always been there, but he knows what he's doing. Everybody else who's attempted to copy what Feige's done has failed. Do we remember the Universal's Monster Universe? Remember the one they launched with Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe? An absolute disaster. I think the only entity that's looking close to being as successful as Feige has been are the people running the Sonic Cinematic Universe, the Sega Cinematic Universe, and we'll see how they get on. But ultimately, Feige has been successful when nobody else has. He's changed the game. No one, not for a long time, is ever beating what Feige's accomplished. In fact, in terms of DC, the only one who could defeat Feige's Marvel Universe, Marvel Studios record is Kevin Feige. And that's the truth there. So if you want a interconnective universe, you need Kevin Feige. Now, I'm not in Kevin Feige's head. I don't know what the man's thinking. I don't know if he would just say, no, I am loyal to Marvel. Or, this is an interesting challenge if I pull this off, Because he does like DC. He has knowledge of the DC universe. He's a big fan of Superman as well. And we know he would have done a lot more and better things with Superman than they did within the DCEU. Imagine wresting Superman. That would be sacrilege to someone like Kevin Feige. So let's just say Zaslav. And I say Zaslav because we know Discovery and Warner Brothers are a thing, they're a merged thing. But it's David Zaslav who's running the narrative on this. He's making all the decisions. It's up to Zaslav what he wants to do. And as we've already discussed, he's taking advice from Alan Horn and Bob Iger. Has he become involved with those people because they're directly connected to Kevin Feige? And this is how he can get a conversation going with Kevin Feige about running a DC Studios. If I were you while you're watching this video, do not assume getting Kevin Feige to run a DC Studios is unviable. It is a very viable thing at this moment in time if David Zaslav wants an interconnected DC franchise. Now, if he doesn't want that and he just wants random movies back to back, standalone movies, he's got more options in who he can bring in to run a DC Studios. So the rumours are that he's using Todd Phillips, the director of the Flash movie and the wonderful, hilarious Hangover movies, as a consultant. Some sites and some journalists believe that he is looking maybe at Todd Phillips to be that Kevin Feige figure. Nobody can do what Kevin does. We've already explained that. But this is an interesting thing because Todd is a very, very good filmmaker. If they are looking to make random, standalone movies, then Todd Phillips would maybe be a good president for DC Studios because he understands the individual movie. So he understands the industry and it's different then. But you need the element of understanding DC. So what's more important here? You could actually have someone like Todd Phillips as president of a DC Studios, but he populates those studios with people who know DC Comics. So you don't necessarily need to be an expert on DC yourself, but you need people and researchers who understand the comics, right? And you need a few fans in there as well. I mean, fans who work for the comics as well. It's important as a passion. One of the things that got the MCU going and people falling in love with the MCU is that it's populated with people who love those comics. Maybe not so much now. Maybe they like, now the people there maybe have a different political mentality. I don't know. But that's how the Marvel Studios model got started. And that's why it worked. You look at Marvel, and even with some of the extreme left politics within it right now, the MCU, it's still exciting. It's still exciting to watch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and see the evolution of Wanda Maximoff. There's still great things going on within that universe, and that's because of Kevin Feige and the people he brought into it. So I'm not going to dismiss Todd Phillips as a viable president of a prospective DC Studios. I think that would work as long as he populates the studios with people who understand DC. So there are your options, boys and girls, and everybody else, right? However you identify as. Everyone's welcome on this channel, of course. You have these two options. If you want an interconnected universe, it's Kevin Feige. If Feige says no to you, do not do it. Because there's nobody around right now who can pull this off. And what's happening is, if you bring someone else in apart from Feige to create an interconnected DC universe, everyone's comparing you to Kevin Feige. You can't win against Kevin Feige because he was the first one to do it, he's still doing it, and you're being compared. And you will be brought down, and you will not be successful. So no Kevin Feige, no interconnected party. That's my opinion. Don't do it. You've already tried to do an interconnected universe. You've done it badly, admittedly. They definitely brought in the wrong people to do it, but they tried and failed. The DCEU isn't an interconnected franchise. The DCEU is literally a franchise full of films. Different films with different takes. Yes, you can say Man of Steel, BVS, even the first Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and even Aquaman are kind of linked into the Snyderverse, including Zack Snyder's Justice League as well. You know, there's about five, I think there's 5 movies where you can kind of say they're canon to the Snyderverse. As I said, Man of Steel, BVS, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman, loosely. So then you've got the rest of the movies that are just a bunch of movies. So what is the DCEU? Is it an interconnected universe, or is it just a bunch of movies? It's just a bunch of movies that started off really well interconnected, then they got rid of Snyder, and now it's a mess. And the Hamadaverse isn't fit for purpose. You don't have to be a Snyder fan to say that. It's the truth. And the 1 or 2 Hamadaverse fanboys and girls, you know, they're not living in a place I like to call the real world. So there are your options. Kevin Feige and an interconnected universe. As I say, it's not impossible to get Feige, but it's difficult, of course. You would imagine more than likely he would say no to this challenge. He's loyal to Marvel. But as I say, me personally, it would be too good an opportunity to turn down. Even if I'd created the Marvel universe, even though it's comfortable for me to remain as king of Marvel Studios, I would be very tempted by the DC live action universe franchise. Because if I can come in and set up Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and Cyborg and all these characters, and I can do it well, and I have a vision, and I'm sure Feige has a vision, I would say, do you know what, Marvel? We've worked brilliantly together, but this is an opportunity I simply can't turn down. What are the chances, if Zaslav wants it, to bring in Kevin Feige? Well, I think it's 50-50. That's all I can say about that at this point. But I'm not writing those chances off. Now, what does David Zaslav actually want? Let's be absolutely clear here. It is my hunch that David Zaslav wants to bring in Kevin Feige as the president of the DC Studios, because that's how ambitious this man is. And my opinion about this is yes. I can be ultra critical about the MCU. That's because I'm fucking jealous and biased towards DC, and I wish we had what Marvel had. Do I appreciate Snyder's movies and the auteur kind of, values within making a movie? Of course I do. But I also want DC to have fun movies where people can tune out and just watch them and have interconnection. It was Feige who stuck the post-credit scenes and made that exciting. And, the Easter eggs and the cameos. But he created something. He created live-action versions, successful live-action versions of Tony Stark, of Captain America. Originally the Incredible Hulk. He's ruined it now. The guy's not perfect, but the guy has created something. Black Widow. So many great live-action versions. He made Black Panther a success where people said Black Panther will never be successful. So if we can get Feige, I say, let's get Kevin Feige. This has been the DCEU Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in tomorrow's DCEU Daily. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.